Hello बच्चों, let's read this question. The question says the correct thermodynamic conditions for the spontaneous reaction at all temperature is. चार options दिए गए हैं A, B, C and D. Option A says delta H, that is change in enthalpy, is less than 0 and delta S, that is change in entropy, is less than 0. Option B says delta H is less than 0 and delta S is equal to 0. Option C says delta H is greater than 0 and delta S is less than 0. Option D says delta H is less than 0 and delta S is greater than 0. First, we'll understand the key concept involved in this question. So, जो key concept involved हुआ है, it is change in Gibbs free energy, which is represented by delta G and its relation with delta H, that is change in enthalpy, and delta S, that is change in entropy. Why we are taking Gibbs free energy? Because for a reaction to be spontaneous, at all temperature, delta G must be negative value. So this we know. So therefore we are considering Gibbs free energy change here. So first we'll write the relationship between delta G, delta H and delta S. So Gibbs free energy equation is delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S, where delta G is change in Gibbs free energy, delta H is change in enthalpy, T is a temperature in Kelvin, delta S is change in entropy. Now we'll see spontaneity criteria. So for the reaction to be spontaneous, delta G should be less than 0. Now we'll see conditions for spontaneous at all temperature. Condition for spontaneity at all temperature. At all temperature. So to ensure that delta G is negative, so this is a negative value at all temperature, we must consider the signs of delta H and delta S. So first we'll see if delta H is less than 0. So if delta H is less than 0, it is a exothermic reaction. And delta S is greater than 0. So in that case, if delta S is greater than 0, this will say that the disorder is more. Disorder is more here, or there is increase in the disorder. So in these two conditions, delta G is always negative. Because if we see the relation, that is delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. So if this is negative, that is delta G value, T is always positive, temperature will never be negative in Kelvin if we say. Then if this is positive and delta S, as we have written, greater than 0, if this is positive, so here negative and 2 positive, because here we have negative value. So therefore overall delta G will be negative at all temperature. This is one condition. So we'll see the options and try to understand which is the correct answer for this. If we take option A, delta H is less than 0 and delta S is also less than 0. So in this condition, delta G can be a positive value or a negative value depending on what is the temperature. Depending on what is the temperature here. So this cannot be a correct answer. Next we'll see option B. Option B says delta H is less than 0 and delta S is equal to 0. So here delta G is equal to delta H, which is a negative value because we are taking delta G is equal to 0. So here delta G is negative, but this case is less common. But this is a less common case. Next we'll move on to the next option, which says delta H is greater than 0 and delta S is less than 0. So here delta G is positive at high temperature. Now we are left with the last option, that is option D, which says delta H is less than 0 and delta S is greater than 0. So here delta G is always negative whatever be the temperature. So therefore, based on the analysis, we can clearly say that option D is the correct answer for this question. Hope you all have understood. All the best.